Good evening, everyone. We'll call this meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you for joining us this evening. We'll begin with roll call.
Benson.
Here.
Sarda. Here. Burdick. Here. Mosier.
Here.
Schramm.
Here.
Weber.
Here.
Mayor Johnson.
Here.
City Manager Leon.
Here.
You have before you the minutes of the work session meeting of February 24th, 2020, and the regular meeting of February 24th. What is your pleasure?
Move the minute.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion about the minutes? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Is anyone opposed? Thank you. Next, you have before you the schedule of bills. What is your pleasure?
I'll move we pay the bills. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion about our bills? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission about our bills? Roll call.
Benson.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Burdick.
Aye.
Mosier.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Next, we have a proclamation for March for Meals. I'll read through it, and then you're welcome to share some comments, and we'll take a photo if you want. So whereas March for Meals is a campaign which seeks to raise awareness of senior hunger and to encourage action on the part of the local community during the month of March through volunteer recruitment and fundraising initiatives. And whereas Mayor for Meals works in conjunction with March for Meals and involves mayors, elected officials, and other employees throughout the city to help raise awareness of senior hunger in their local area. And whereas mayors and other local officials will help deliver meals to those in need. And whereas 2020 marks the 46th anniversary of the Meals on Wheels Association, now therefore I, Nathan Johnson, Mayor of Yankton, do hereby proclaim March 12th through March 20th as Community Champions Week in the city of Yankton. So please join me in celebrating that.
Ooh, wow, I got one in frame.
Official.
Okay. Great, thank you.
If you want to share some words, Christy, I know you've got some big stuff coming up.
Yeah, I do. Thank you. Well, it's always a pleasure to come back and address all of our triumphs at the center. And I know you don't need me up here for a long time because, as most know, I can talk for hours about what we do at the center. So I'm just going to showcase a few items and review those with you. I had to speak at the United Way this year, and they give you 2 to 3 minutes to speak. So the wheel is greased. I can keep this down to a few minutes, but. Each March we celebrate National March for Meals, and it's a national event where everybody throughout the country recognizes the plight of senior hunger. And you know, I don't know that people in Yankton County fully understand how many seniors we have that go without. We're not able to ask seniors their income level because everyone is able to get a meal at no charge if they need it. So we're not, through the state, able to do that. But we do have a program called our Commodities Program where seniors come to our building and get a big box of food and a block of cheese. And that's a federally funded program, which there is a form to fill out. And you would be absolutely shocked that we have 2 seniors, a husband and a wife, living on $700 a month. That's pretty typical. And we have 100 people, 100 seniors that come to our building that fall under the poverty level. And we haven't even scratched the surface in the community as far as the additional need. I just want to, like I said, touch on a couple of things. Right now is tax season, and if you come to the center, we have tax aides there that are preparing 400 individuals. That's about our average, about 400 people's taxes for no charge. Huge service to the community. Huge for our seniors. Also, and this is a thing that just blows me away. We could keep our building open with just one program. We could validate having the center over one program, and that's our Medicare Part D program. I remember a couple years ago, I was going throughout the community and bragging about this program because we saved Yankton County seniors $333,000 in pharmaceutical costs. Well, we doubled it this year. $623,000 were saved for seniors with our the pharmaceutical costs. Now, that enables seniors to not have to pick between drugs and food. That enables seniors to put more money back into our local economy. And what an endeavor! $623,000. I can't even wrap my arms around that. It's an amazing program. A couple of other things: we got taxes, we got Medicare Part D. Of course, you know all about our meal program. It's fantastic. I think everybody. I'm going to look around. Yeah, I think everybody qualifies in this room to become a member of the center because you only have to be 18. So I think I'm pretty sure you're all over 18. So for just $35 a year, you can become a member of the center. Mr. Sarg over there is a lifetime member of the center, and we've got a lot of people that are very involved at the center. Amy is also a member of the center. So we would encourage you to support the center by becoming a member and getting in the loop on all the wonderful programs that we have. But I want to talk about a couple more programs and then talk about our Meals on Wheels program. You know, this year we had to fulfill a need in the community that I was just absolutely in awe of, and that was to serve as the only Red Cross facility in the community for our flood victims. And I'll never forget getting the phone call on Saturday that we had about 15 to 20 individuals have to come to our building that were well into their 80s from the Walnut Village because they were without electricity and they had nowhere to go. So we had to set up these cots, and I went in and I got food out and tried to be as hospitable as possible. And, you know, these are like Boy Scout cots. I don't know if you've seen one in a long time, but I'm telling you what, you get an 80-year-old 2 feet off the ground into a cot. A couple of them had wound vacs on them. They had, instruments on them that had to be plugged in, like the wound vac. And what a service that was to the community. It was just unbelievable. But I learned a valuable thing from that one experience, and I keep learning this as I've gone through this being the director over the last 7 years. I keep learning that we're running out of space. And I'm telling you, we're running out of space, and I'll tell you why. We have 200 people come out for our rib night, and we can barely handle that in our main dining room. We have special events like our volunteer appreciation dinner and our Christmas dinner where we're maxed out. In addition to that, we ended up, because we had a rental, thank goodness, City Hall opened up, and we had to move about 5-6 folks over to City Hall because we have commitments within our facility. So again, if we would have had a bigger facility, another, say, hall, we could have had that for just the Red Cross victims, or the flood victims. So when our Shine program's there, every room's taken. When our tax people are there, every room is used. And I'll give you another example. I'm working on a VA telehealth program, and this is going to be something really super exciting. It's hard for our seniors to get up to Sioux Falls, for our veterans to get up to the VA. And right now I'm working on, it's not a done deal, I'm waiting for the MOU, but we're looking at having a VA telehealth program in our building, which will take one of my offices that I have people in making phone calls and doing different things in. So this program is going to be awesome. The veterans will come in and they'll get counseling. They'll be able to explain what their health issues are and then make a decision on whether they do need to trek to Sioux Falls or not. It's going to be amazing, and I'm super excited about it, but it's going to bottleneck one of my offices that I really need. So we were fortunate this year. We've been so fortunate with our fundraising efforts. So many people have worked so hard, and we've been so successful that this year we were able to put some seed money away and invest it. And that seed money, in my opinion, is for building expansion because it's going to need to happen. We've got the baby boomers coming. We're going to need more room. And fortunately, we're on a piece of property that we can expand. So I want to plant that seed with the city commission because it's coming. And when the Red Cross, when the victims came, and then now this VA telehealth, I'm just like, where are we going to put these programs? How are we going to manage it? But shifting over to Meals on Wheels, the value of the Meals on Wheels program, I think most people think, okay, seniors get a good meal delivered to them. Yes, they do. There's 2 times in your life that nutrition is vitally important. It's when you're growing as a child and when your body's breaking down as a senior. Super, super important to have good nutrition. That keeps people out of the hospital, keeps them healthy. The other thing that the Meals on Wheels program does is it's socialization. Many of these people have no support system. They get that, good morning, how you doing? And see these volunteers coming and going, and that's just really the value of that is immense. But the thing that I think is the most important, this is the most important, is it's a set of eyes on very high-risk seniors. It's a set of eyes. It's a wellness check. And I'll give you a quick story. Just recently, we had a gentleman that wasn't doing well. He wasn't feeling well, and he told the driver, reported it back. We got the daughter there, rushed him to the hospital, and sure enough, he was having a stroke. And most of you know what ends up happening after a stroke most of the time, if you're not seen right away, is you throw a clot and you have a heart attack. So time is of the essence when you're having a stroke. And we were able to get that person the medical help that they needed and could have potentially saved their life. And I can tell you so many stories like that, but I don't have the time right now to do it. But I want you to understand that this Meals on Wheels program is so, so vital to the program and all the programs that we offer at the center. And I'm super excited about a Rockathon, March 17th. I'd invite everybody to come out for corned beef and cabbage. We've got 33 community leaders that are going to be rocking and raising money. And I'm thinking we're going to raise between $30,000 and $35,000. So these dollars, I'll also say one great thing about this campaign is we're in the paper, we're on the radio, and we're really creating a lot of public awareness about the senior hunger. People don't hear about it, but it's real. I'm here to tell you it's very real. And with that awareness also comes people out in the community hearing that we have this program. People, getting their parents and their grandparents connected with the program. Even if there's no resources, we don't turn anyone away. We provide meals for anybody that needs the meals. And I think just creating that awareness and letting people know the program exists is vitally important. We have had a huge influx of people that couldn't afford meals, and we've been giving them free meals. So this money is vitally important for us to continue our mission. So does anybody have any questions? I wish I had more time, but I know you got a lot of business to do. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Christy, thanks for that update on all the work and good things that are happening in the center. And we hope for a successful Rockathon this year. Next is the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Honorable Mayor, members of the Commission, a few things for you before you get to your business this evening. As many folks know, we had a pretty big police and emergency call last Monday evening, and I just want to point out that it's been brought to my attention that because of our officers' quick response, Officer Dylan Wilson, along with the other folks on shift that night, definitely performed some life-saving immediate response. So we're looking at doing a special commendation for some of those folks here when things get settled. But all of our emergency responders, they can't work without the support of the dispatchers, but EMS and others that on that call were critical, and because of some of their efforts, there was a life save or two. So just note that as part of the when we go to bed, our night shift sometimes faces. So I wanted to bring that forward to you. Citywide cleanup is on the way, and I love the warm weather, but I've already seen a mattress on the boulevard. Too early for mattresses on the boulevard, so if you'll help me and remind folks, please don't put stuff out until March 28th. You can start taking it with no charge to the transfer station March 21st. People that put stuff out now are going to have it taken, and we'll address that with code enforcement. But even though it's beautiful, just wait a couple weeks before you start taking things out there. So just a reminder for that. Also, we do have a city election coming up on April the 14th, so be aware of that. Start getting the word out for people to register to vote, and also to either vote absentee or to vote on the 14th for City Commission. Next time we meet, we'll have a work session. It's recommended by not only the Municipal League, but also our insurance providers that we, as agents of the city who are working with employees, you guys work with 3 real tough ones, Al, Ross, and I work with a lot of others, but that we have some training periodically about workplace issues, nepotism, conflict of interest, harassment, things like that. So Lisa Marceau will be coming to give us some training. I'll invite the department heads. Just good reminders, things to keep in mind, not that we've done anything wrong or there's anybody on the naughty list, anything like that, but just good refreshers for all of us to remember. Legislative session is wrapping up. So a couple of bills that we were involved in talking to our legislators about and are important to us is the, I guess I call it the distracted driving or texting mobile phone bill. So that's something that'll change some of our operations with law enforcement. The rural electric bill, while we don't have a municipal electric, that one has some implications for us with other rural utilities, so appreciate you communicating with our legislators on that. The driver's license test in Spanish was another one that many of us communicated with on. So if you will, when you see them, join me in thanking our legislators for representing us and for really giving us a lot of feedback. I hear from being on the Municipal League Board a lot that our legislators are some of the best and they're some of the most communicative, and they certainly respond to me. So if you'll give them, extend our thanks to them when you see them. I'm going to visit with you a little bit about COVID-19, and then I know the mayor wants to make a few comments as well. So I just want to reiterate what I said this morning on morning coffee, is that out of just a real abundance of caution, we have begun and probably started this process over a month ago, talking in staff and internally about the COVID-19 or coronavirus and what our internal plans are going to be. We have a document that I'll share with you all, and we'll talk about everything in our document, and in our plan is in keeping with those practices and best practices or standard practices and regulations that are already put forth by lead experts and officials that we consider to be the lead, and that's the World Health Organization, CDC, Center for Disease Control, South Dakota Department of Health, Yankton County Emergency Management, and then our local MDs and medical administrators. I've visited with both Doug Ekron and Chuck Amon and have talked to them about our assistance and partnering should we need to, and things like that. Of course, there's no, I think right now we're in sort of hygiene mode and reminding folks of those types of things, but we are ready should things escalate in our community. Each of the department will be responsible for having their own plans because we're so diverse. How our transfer station handles something would be different than inside City Hall, so we'll be talking through each department with their plans. We're also dealing with a lot of employees, so we're going to talk through with them best practices as well. Our document is meant to be very understandable and easy to implement. I'll criticize the federal government a little bit with their NIMS. While that's an important part of command, it's, for those of you who've taken the classes, it's, you can't bring it up. You have to take a look. And when you're, in a serious situation, it's nice to have something that's real straightforward and basic. So ours is meant to provide that. So we'll talk about that a little later on. And we just feel that it's important to have these types of conversations when we can be proactive instead of scrambling and having conversations when we have to be reactive. So that's the purpose of that. Again, I don't have any other information that anyone else has. What I have is information that's put forward by those agencies, but we're just making sure that we're being proactive, which I think it's completely a different thing, but part of what happened a year ago helped us to have conversations, more conversations in advance. So I'm happy to answer questions about that or anything else that I've spoken about. Otherwise, I'll hand it off to the mayor to give his comments.
So I was in a room full of health professionals and emergency responders today talking about coronavirus and making sure we're preparing as much as we can for whatever's coming. And one thing they keep stressing over and over again is there's no reason to panic. We need to really focus on preventative measures. And I guess one thing, I know there's a lot of uncertainty out there, and there potentially could be a lot of challenges. And so I just want to encourage everyone to be empathetic during this time and think about how we can raise ourselves up to help each other as we're facing this situation that is unlike anything we've experienced before. I mean, we look across the ocean and the really drastic measures that are being taken in places like Italy, where they're not allowing funerals or weddings. They aren't allowing concerts, movie theaters to be open. So does that lie ahead for us? It's difficult to say at this point. We're not there yet, and hopefully we won't get there. Just tonight I was reading in the Omaha World Herald the story of the first Nebraska coronavirus victim, and it was her father, actually. And this was an individual who, she's a special needs person and has had respiratory issues her entire life. And of course, with her being diagnosed with this and her realizing that she had exposed many people, it's caused a lot of anger towards her and a lot of rumors, and it's really devastated her father. And so I think it's important to keep in mind that whatever happens, we are all going through our own personal issues to this, so it's important to keep that in mind. And just remember how we can help each other, whether it's not going to Walmart and taking all the hand sanitizer or toilet paper or whatever because someone else might need some, or if it's just little things that we can do as the virus spreads to help each other out, whether it's daycare, if schools have to close, or bringing food to one another. So I just hope this is an opportunity for us to show each other how strong we can be. Hopefully it doesn't get any more serious than it is, but certainly something that I know all of us are cognizant of and reflecting on. So let's take preventative measures. I know a lot of focus is on the fact that for most people this will be maybe a minor cold. But the reason we're so focused on preventing the spread is because for those who are vulnerable, this is much more dangerous than the flu. So the longer that it is circulating in our society, the more vulnerable people are at risk of losing their lives. And for many of us, that can mean people that we love. So that's why we really need to focus on the hygiene and preventing the spread. And with that, I would ask, are there any questions for the city manager about her report?
Obviously, this is
great. Could you step to the podium, please? This is being aired live on YouTube.
I'm pretty loud. Obviously, this is of great concern to me because over half of my members are high risk, are seniors and elderly. I've reached out to the state to find out kind of what the guidelines are. Obviously, we have ramped up the hand sanitizer, playing cards, and wiping down doors and wiping the building down a great deal. But my question is, that best practices that you're talking about, Amy, is that something that's published that we could all take a look
I
at?
have a mountain of links that I can send you, best
Okay.
practices for government buildings and nonprofit organizations, and
Okay.
get those to you, and I can also share with you our internal plans as well.
Okay, great, thank you.
And I know members of the medical community are sending out some information too, and you would be on that list as well. All right, if there are no more questions, we'll move on to public ed. Please step to the podium.
Excuse me, my name is Edward Gleich, and they talk about these hand sanitizers. It seems like they're a voucher who, whenever they get a victim, they melt the prices up. Now, if you take something simple like Joy dish soap, that's a hand sanitizer. You can use that, and that's cheaper than buying an $8 bottle of hand sanitizer when you buy a bottle of Joy or Dove for dishes, and that they kill germs too. So I mean, you don't have to. But I said, the people out there, they got a victim, so they're going to melt the cow, like to price it up. So.
I agree with you. What did we all do before hand sanitizer? I mean, soap has always been antibacterial.
I know that, but the people with $14 bottle of hand sanitizer, you can buy a $3 bottle of Joy or Dove, and that looks just as good as hand sanitizers.
I'm picking up what you're throwing down. I agree with you. Soap works too. Hand washing's a good idea.
Thank you, Ed. Now is the time for public appearances, so if there's anyone in the audience who would like to address the commission about something not on tonight's agenda, now would be the time to do that by stepping up to the podium. We do have one scheduled public appearance, and that is from Commander Todd Brandt from our police department. So Todd, now you could step up to the podium and get us started. Thank you.
Fuel it up. Thank you. Honorable Mayor, City Manager Leone, Commissioners, first I want to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to attend the FBI's National Academy. It was a once-in-a-lifetime experience that I will forever hold dear to my heart, that it was very impactful to me to be part of that. So to provide a little bit of history on the National Academy, President Hoover back in the 30s saw issues with prohibition coming about and the lack of law enforcement in certain areas. So he wanted to make more of a generalized and standardizing of law enforcement throughout the country. So that's what facilitated the first opening of the first class in 1935, and then in the 60s, President Kennedy invited international students, our international partners across the ocean, to come and partner with us to find out different cures and causes to law enforcement issues throughout the world. We're not immune to things that occur overseas, so we're constantly working with our international partners as well. Next slide, please. So the FBI Academy for the National Academy is a 10-week program. The one that I attended was 11 weeks, simply because of the break in there on Thanksgiving. So we got an extra 5 days off, but we had to make that up as far as the 10-week program. So who's involved in it? Law enforcement leaders throughout the country. Is held in Quantico, Virginia. It's very picturesque out there, and it's all inclusive. It's all on the Marine base, and everything happens on the facility there. It's very intimidating when you first arrive there. There's several buildings on the campus, and everything is interconnected with, we call them hamster tunnels, but they're glass tunnels that connect all the buildings. So to get to class every day, it took about a 10-minute walk just to get from your dorms to the classrooms. So you have state-of-the-art facilities at the National Academy. You have a 21st century library that's 4 stories. So all the resources you need to accommodate your academics are all at your fingertips, as well as media. That was one of the things I was impressed with. It's kind of an older picture, but they have all the standard media components of today's press environment. So officers, we were able to do some mock scenes where we were able to get in front of a camera and see how we looked and then critique it by all the other agencies that were there. So it's not just law enforcement, it's also your military enforcement as well and your military leaders. There's undergraduate and graduate level courses that you can take. You have to have your bachelor's degree to take graduate level courses. There's courses in behavioral science, communications, health and fitness, forensic science, law, and leadership development. Fitness is one of the most prized things that they looked at in the academy, and one of the most prevalent things is that they're looking at is not necessarily the physical fitness, but the mental health aspect of it as well. So you have weekly courses in fitness and health, so you're continually being tested and monitored as far as what your physical standards is. And that all is in preparedness for changing your lifestyle and living a more healthy lifestyle. In law enforcement, there's a lot of times where you have those moments where you don't have the most healthy living style when you're eating out of a drive-through 2 or 3 nights a week, just simply for the fact that you got work to get done. So they try to teach you ways that even if you have to go to those restaurants and go to those areas, you don't just have to eat the fried food. You can get alternatives to that. So that all leads up to the Yellow Brick Road. It's a physical challenge course that's on the Marine Corps base that the Marines use, and it's a 6.1 endurance course, which involves a 3.1 mile run at the end to finish it up. But there's rocks faces you have to traverse and come down on, and netting and swamp and everything else out there. So it's a very, very inducive and very time-consuming and very rigorous course that you have to make it through. Not only do we do this for ourselves, we also do this for the community, the law enforcement community in particular out there. We had a law enforcement auction where all the proceeds went to the fallen law enforcement families. Every student was able to bring a piece of item to be donated, to be auctioned, and we ended up raising $19,000 for the local law enforcement fallen brothers and sisters. So I was quite impressed by that. And it's, again, all free of charge, and everybody donated something to the event. Again, it's a very unique experience, diverse collection of law enforcement. You have everybody from agencies much larger than Yankton, like Los Angeles and New York, but also much smaller to 1- and 2-man departments that we're also able to send people. And it's college accredited. It's national collaboration of working with other agencies to try to solve up-and-coming issues that are in law enforcement. So it's a very unlimited resources as post-NA. So I now have 249 other resources that I can reach out to just with a simple email. Educational presentations were fantastic. They talked a lot about PTSD and law enforcement. We all too often overlook a lot of issues that are surrounding PTSD and law enforcement. Sheriff Timothy Whitcomb in the bottom right-hand corner was a undersheriff, the chief deputy, and experienced a tragic loss of his sheriff when his sheriff had an incident involving his wife being brutally attacked and couldn't deal with it, never sought help, and ended up at one certain point in time calling undersheriff at the time, Timothy Whitcomb, up and telling him that he was going to kill himself, and ultimately did. And so he felt empowered to rise up and start preaching and teaching law enforcement to look at themselves when they're having issues, reach out and get that help. So we also talked about major incidences that plague law enforcement agencies at the time. Eric Free there in the bottom right-hand corner was a survivalist that went on the run after shooting 2 Pennsylvania state police officers, and we talked at length about the issues surrounding that manhunt and how resources were expended to no limit trying to get this individual back into custody. Sergeant Stubbe with the military in the center there talked about, again, in the military aspect of things, but again, brought it all back home to leadership and taking care of your people. And then on the top, we had a chiefs and sheriffs panel to teach other aspiring chiefs and sheriffs to what they did to achieve those positions. So there was a lot of teaching that went on as far as the development of leadership within your department. And then Gordon Graham, fantastic speaker on risk management. What are we doing to take care of our people and to minimize risk? And they tied it all together with 21st century concepts in police and leadership, empowering our people to do better and developing succession plans so that when we leave, somebody is there to take our place and to make it look like we were never there. That's my goal. And to lead organizational change, how do we make that change? How do we implement those changes in our department? And then what's best suited for our community and our department? Some of the things I'll be working on, we already have a mental health and wellness program that we're starting, and I want to work with the current people that are involved in that and develop some policies and some incentives for physical and mental health standards, and also recruitment and retention. And I want to create a recruitment video and update our webpage. And these are things that can be done with little or no funds. I saw and networked with a lot of people that have created their own, so it is possible to do with a little amount of funding to do these things. But it's so important that we as law enforcement are teaching our community and teaching our future leaders what's necessary to make those changes in their society and make their department better and make their communities better and safer. So in closing, again, I want to again emphasize that this cost the city, the training was absolutely free. The only costs that were incorporated were some uniform costs and some fuel for me to drive out and drive back. So it was very inexpensive for the department for that kind of level of training. And again, in closing, just to thank the commission, Mayor Johnson, and City Manager Leone for allowing me the opportunity to attend this once-in-a-lifetime event. So thank you very much.
Well, I'm glad you had a great experience there, Commander Brandt, and you were able to bring home some things to work on and better our department and our officers. That was our hope, and so it's great to see that's what's occurring. I think it's very important that we give our employees opportunities to learn and grow. So we're really glad you were able to secure that opportunity. You did the work on your own, so we just had to say yes. So thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to address the commission about something not on tonight's agenda? All right, seeing no movement, we'll move on to the consent item agenda. Number one is setting March 23rd, 2020 at 6 p.m. in this room for the next work session for the Yankton City Commission to conduct workplace relations training. Number two is consideration of memorandum 20-56 regarding approval of the new volunteer firefighters per workers' compensation and South Dakota codified law requirements. Number three is establish March 23rd, 2020 as the date for the public hearing on the request for a special events on-sale liquor license for July 2nd, 9th, 16th, 23rd, 30th, and August 6th, 13th, 20th, and 27th for Ben's Brewing Company to be at Music at the Meridian. Number four is establishing March 23rd, 2020 as the date for the public hearing on the request for a special events retail on-sale liquor license for May 22nd, 2020 from Ben's Brewing for the South Dakota Kayak Challenge in Riverside Park. And number five is establishing March 23rd, 2020 as the date for the public hearing on the request for a special events retail on-sale malt beverage license and special retail on-sale wine dealer's license for April 2nd, 2020 from Mount Marty College. What is your pleasure?
Move the consent items.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on any of these items? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on any of these items? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Is anyone opposed? Thank you very much. Moving on to old business. Number one is consideration of memorandum 20-48 regarding the request for a special malt beverage on-sale retailer's license for August 22nd, 2020 from the Yankton Rodeo Association for an event on their rodeo grounds. What is your pleasure?
I'll move the memorandum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Aye.
Burdick. Aye.
Mosier.
Aye.
Strawn.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 2 under old business is consideration of memorandum 20-49 regarding the request for a new on-sale liquor restaurant license for January 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2020 from To Be Free LLC doing business as R&B Beer and Burgers at 2901 Broadway. What is your pleasure?
Move the memo.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Burdick. Aye. Moser.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 3 under old business is consideration of memorandum 20-50 regarding the request for a special events malt beverage on-sale retailer's license and a special retail on-sale wine dealer's license for March 21st, 2020 from Ag Farmers for an event at the National Field Archery Association headquarters. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Moser.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Burdick.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 4 under old business is consideration of memorandum 20-53 regarding the request for a transfer of ownership and location of a retail on-sale or on-off sale malt beverage and South Dakota Farm wine license for July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2020 from iMart Stores LLC at 301 Broadway Avenue to Shri LLC at 821 Broadway Avenue. What is your pleasure?
I'll move the memorandum. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Burdick.
Aye.
Moser.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 5 under old business is consideration of memorandum 20-54 regarding the request for a transfer of name and reduction of location of a retail on-off sale malt beverage and South Dakota Farm wine license for July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2020 from Shri LLC at 821 Broadway Avenue. What is your pleasure?
Move the memo.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Weber.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Burdick.
Aye.
Moser.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Moving on to new business. Number 1 is consideration of memorandum 20-57, approving the recommendation of election workers for the City of Yankton election on April 14th, 2020, and establishing the compensation for said election workers. What is your pleasure?
Move the memo.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Benson.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Burdick.
Aye.
Moser.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 2 under new business is consideration of memorandum 20-58 and resolution 20-18 regarding decommissioning a police vehicle that was involved in an accident. What is your pleasure?
Move the memo. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Sarda.
Aye.
Burdick.
Aye.
Moser.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 3 is consideration of memorandum 20-55 regarding the request by Deputy Finance Officer Lisa Yardley to apply for a scholarship to attend the South Dakota Municipal League Finance Officer School. What is your pleasure?
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? I hope you have fun, Lisa, and learn a lot. Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Burdick.
Aye.
Moser.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 4, under new business, is consideration of memorandum 20-59, a bid award for the Crosswind Runway projects at Chan-Gurney Municipal Airport. This is a $2,727,064 bid from Double H Paving, Inc., and it is 100% funded by the Federal Aviation Administration. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Mingo, is there anything you would like to add about this project?
The only negative aspect was that in the bid alternate we weren't able to accept. There would have been a small turnaround at the end of the runway, but we're hopeful that a future taxiway improvement project that we program in an out year will take care of that problem. And otherwise, I'm very thankful that the State Division of Aeronautics and the FAA were willing to adjust their funding amount so we can make it happen.
So this will still be dependent upon FAA approval, is that correct?
Yep. We have every indication from their staff that we've got the green light. So, but until we get a document signed from them, nothing is official.
And so when would you expect construction to commence? This summer yet?
Oh yes, it'll be a 2020 project. Correct.
Dave, would this limit use of the airport during construction, or is it still available just depending on certain?
So the main runway is going to be open all except for a few night hours where we've, in the contract, we have it scheduled for where the actual crossing takes place. That work would be done in the evenings. At some point, there'll be a period of time where it's closed, not more than a few days though.
Any more commission discussion? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Moser.
Aye.
Strahm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Burdick.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, motion passes. Number 5, under new business, is consideration of memorandum 20-60, a BY Water District easement on city-owned property at 33rd Street and Highway 81. What is your pleasure?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? So Dave, did I read this right? It's an 80-foot by 80-foot easement?
Correct, and a part of that is in a easement overlay, so the actual impact on the property is a smaller dimension than that. It would be ideal if it could be located in some other property that didn't have any development potential, but we exhausted all of those alternatives, and this was the best case scenario under the circumstances that could be identified, and they do provide quite a substantial service to part of an area that's in the corporate limits, so it's part of that partnership that we've developed with BY over the last few years.
And so do you have an idea of what this will allow BY Water to do in the future?
What this will allow them to do, it's for the main trunk line that the commission approved the easement on in 2015 that provides a substantial increase in service to the east portion of the corporate limits and outside the corporate limits to the east of town.
Any further commission discussion? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Strahm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Burdick.
Aye.
Moser.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, motion passes. Number 6 under new business is consideration of memorandum 20-61 recommending approval of resolution 20-19, a federal emergency management agency flood hazard mitigation grant application for the Martin Creek Properties acquisition project. What is your pleasure?
I'll move the memorandum. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Dave, once again, this is your project. Can you tell the public a little bit about what this involves?
Sure. For over 20 years now, as opportunities have presented themselves with either local funding or, for the most part, with FEMA money, as we've had disaster declarations and funding has been available, we've tried to acquire property in our stormwater management corridor, the Martin Creek Stormwater Management Corridor. Most people think of it as the Martin Creek Greenbelt and Trail System. All of those properties through the years have been acquired in incrementally, I guess, with substantially with federal funding involved. This is another one of those opportunities based on a current disaster declaration that we're able to function under. We had 20-some sites in the community, and this program seemed like it was best suited for about 7 that we identified, and these had to be occupied residential structures in the creek that the city would be willing to contractually commit to acquiring and removing the structure and to abate the risk or eliminate the risk potential. And also the biggest factor is that the owners had to all be in concurrence and voluntarily sign up for their property to be considered. Of the 7 that we contacted, 6 of them were on board with us including their property in the application process. They have the ability to pull out at any time, either now or even after FEMA, if we're so lucky, successfully chooses our project to fund. The property owners still have the right to say, oh, I changed my mind. So what we have is an application for $565,000 that would acquire 6 properties, and it would also pay for all of the administrative costs associated with that, appraisals, et cetera, and it would also pay for structure removal and post-removal site work to create the grading and stream bank stabilization that we would need. Our share, based on the way the percentages break out, would be 15%, would be $83,325,000. That would come from a combination of funds that we have set aside for Martin Creek property acquisition and also some second penny money.
Is there any further commission discussion? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Weber.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Sarda.
Aye.
Burdick.
Aye.
Moser.
Aye.
Traum.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Number 7 under new business is consideration of memorandum 20-62 regarding the bid award for the 5th Street reconstruction project. The low bidder was Masonry Components at $342,924, and this would extend from Broadway to Green Street along 5th Street. What is your pleasure?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Adam, could you talk about the scope of this project?
Yes, this is a complete street reconstruction project, minor underground utility work. It'll be the street section replaced with a new concrete street, same width. Will include sidewalk in places where there's no sidewalk.
Can I ask, how long has this been on our radar to replace this? I know A Street was on for a long time, that got delayed a lot, but it's been in the city works for a few years.
It's been in the budget cycles for a few years, yes.
Is there any further commission discussion? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Please step to the podium.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome, everyone. Mayor, city commissioners, citizens, I'm here on behalf of my clients, the winners who are attending today. There are also a number of people who have signed a resolution that will address some of my remarks to the audience. There are concerns, not necessarily about the road improvement itself, but the uniformity of the sidewalks and the impact on the homeowners and the care that they've put over the years on their right-of-way. Now, I was writing down remarks, and perhaps I misheard, but I do believe that there was some discussion that this was going to be about sidewalk where there's no sidewalk. My understanding, and I'm not sure if it's accurate or not, but I would like to hear further comment, would be that there are going to be, with this uniform road, and I believe it's addressed in the city's letter of February 24 that was, I think, hand-delivered to property owners. It doesn't specify in the letter, but I believe the dialogue that's occurred afterward indicates that both sides of the street, one side has a sidewalk, I believe that's the north side, the south side does not, but both sides will have, if the road improvement goes through, each side will have a 5-foot sidewalk. I think that's similar to what you'll see in other parts of the city, whether that is in front of Stockman's and on H&K or in other areas in town where things like that have occurred. And that obviously is a lot different of an impact to the homeowner in a residential area where there are some very restricted right-of-ways and there's been some building for many months, if not years, up to that part of the process. So for example, my clients, in addition to having a large and beloved, what I would call an anchor tree on their property, they also have a garage, and I believe there are other owners, you can look up and down the street like I did this morning, and can see that they will have either structures or utility poles or things that will have to be moved along to conform to those new sidewalks that will come in. I also understand that the sidewalks will not just occur where there is no sidewalk, but will occur to replace the sidewalk that's on the north side of the street, in part because that is not ADA compliant. And I do understand in your correspondence of February 24 that that's an important issue that the city has to comply with, not necessarily for federal dollars, and I don't believe there are necessarily federal dollars involved, but that they want to have that kind of uniformity, and thus that's why there's this large sidewalk that is going to be, if approved, put on all of these property owners that then, while the sidewalk is not an assessment, they have to take care of now a much larger area of sidewalk now and down the road than they did before. And so I have come to you tonight to express the concerns of my clients. And those are as follows: that they're not opposed to the road, they are opposed to the size of the uniform sidewalk. They and others are wondering if there aren't exceptions, in part to preserve some of those anchor property landmarks, such as a large maple tree, or even things just as simple as landscaping, or to keep their garage, which has existed not in the right-of-way, from being so close to where the sidewalk will now approach. When I was there this morning and I looked, it would be to the west, it did look like the survey flags were not, in a uniform alignment. There were some bends and some markings that were not consistent with the straight line, and I assume there are a variety of reasons for that, but it also appears that where this kind of project will occur in the future, for instance on Riverside Drive, while this is supposed to be uniform on both sides of the street, I do think if you walk Riverside Drive, you can quickly discern that's not going to be the case, at least in that area. And so, like variances, my clients, and I'm assuming other property owners who signed this resolution, would want to know what kind of exceptions can be done for their property so that they don't have the kind of drastic different look that they're expecting that they don't want. So in short, my clients are very happy that there will be a new road, but are not pleased that sidewalks will be the kind of encumbrance that have been talked about. They haven't had a lot of time to adjust to that reality, and more importantly, they had been for years being good stewards of the property, and they've always been good stewards of the property. And I think most of the owners that are up and down, and frankly in Yankton, are like that as well, but they don't want to lose those kind of vital and cherished landmarks, and they're looking to you for some sort of guidance on either a variance or exceptions or things that the city can do to work with them to address their concerns. So with that, I'll leave it to the commissioners to comment and discuss further. Thank you, and I'm willing to provide additional feedback if there are questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I don't know if this is a time where Amy, Ross, Adam, I know you've had discussions with some of these property owners about their concerns, so we are familiar with them. I don't know if you can address some of those concerns and some of the questions that Steve brought up about, is there room for variance or accommodating some of these changes? It might also be a good time to talk about our active transportation plan and why we are trying to build sidewalks that are uniform throughout the community?
Sure. I won't handle the engineering aspects because they won't let me do that, which is probably a good thing, or we would have a lot of problems with our roads and streets. So I'll let Adam address that, but I will talk a little bit about the active transportation plan. So that was a plan that was passed in, I think, we presented it in 2016, and you guys, then see the seated commission passed it then, or adopted the plan in 2017. And what we did is we did an evaluation of our whole community and set up priority areas where we wanted to focus on intermobility and multimodal transportation, with the commitment that our community would be more pedestrian friendly and more ADA friendly and more friendly towards bikes, etc. So another one of those commitments that we made in the plan was the belief that we wanted to increase the use of sidewalk and make sure that we're creating neighborhoods that are welcome and open for everyone to utilize, so regardless of ability or mobility. One of the things that the then seated commission did is made an adjustment to our Yankton road tax, and we use that for street maintenance. But what that allowed us to do by increasing that is to then supplant some general fund money towards sidewalks. So understanding that where there isn't currently sidewalks, and we have some neighborhoods like this one where there isn't sidewalks on both sides, where there just simply isn't sidewalk, that when we reconstruct the street, we would move forward and put the sidewalk on either side. So, that's where that comes from. It's up to the commission what you want to do. Just food for thought. We've done a number of projects where we've had sidewalks going in or trails going in where we had to remove trees, or if you go on 8th Street, you can see some areas where we're really close to properties, structures, etc. We do like to work with property owners when we can. My understanding, and I'll let Adam speak to the engineering, but my understanding is that in this instance, to make our sidewalk ADA compliant, that tree, the tree in question, the maple tree, is probably one that at best could be damaged and probably needs to be removed. I do believe our engineering staff spoke with the property owner, and we can hear a little bit more about that. But I won't get into the technicalities. But that's sort of the background and the philosophy behind what's happening here. It's certainly not an intention to, just lay down concrete to anger neighborhoods or anything like that. The intention is intermobility and walkability, and to enhance that whenever we can. So, Adam, if you want to address some of the engineering aspects, and then if folks have questions or want to comment, we can address those.
Sure. So the location where the maple tree is at 5th and Lynn, the existing ramp that's there on the north-south sidewalk is out of compliance. It's our duty to replace that sidewalk with a compliant curb ramp. And doing that will means that the sidewalk there needs to be lowered. And the existing sidewalk is right adjacent to the tree. It'll be difficult to accomplish that. We'll do our best. The new ramp that would be in the east-west ramp at that location, there's just a lot of grade issues to make it compliant. We like those curb cuts, ramps to be at intersections because that's where motorists expect the crossings to be. I will say, in the discussions that were had with the property owners and the engineering staff, they did talk about possible adjustments to the location of the crossing, moving it further south away from the tree. I will caution we do run into other obstacles if we do that. That you're introducing a mid-block crossing at that point, which then I feel we would have to sign. We'll have pavement markings. We'll have to include no parking areas, because it's not an expected location for a pedestrian crossing. And we need to have that sight distance, that vision visual there for motorists to see that. So and that was in the discussion that we could make adjustments, but the tree is just in a location where it creates a lot of difficulties in designing something too standard. And we work with ADA, American with Disabilities Act standards. It's other locations along there that I know that engineering staff have met with the property owners. There was talks of landscaping, and I know that the engineering staff was agreeable to look at adjusting the alignment of the sidewalk to help avoid the landscaping as much as possible. So, and there was other property owners along there that, the plan is to remove trees, and they were okay with that. There was some that even asked to have extra trees removed, but we will not be doing that, so.
Adam, on this picture I'm looking at, there's, well, I'm not an engineer, I'm married to one, so if I use the wrong term, I apologize to you and to him. There's a culvert there. Is it a culvert that you would call that?
There's a drop inlet.
A drop inlet, thank you.
Does
Does that play with anything in the design that's making us go one way or the other?
That does
And
too.
that stays?
Yes, that
okay.
stays. There was no plans to do any work with that drop inlet. That makes it even more complicated, making grades work.
It's commented that there's structures when you look to the west, whichever way, east-west. There's probably some rules you have to follow, how close you can put a sidewalk to a structure, I would imagine. Do we comply with them, or are there no rules?
There's no rules associated with that. I believe the only structure the structure that's being spoke of, I believe, is just in the right of way. And we don't allow structures in the right of way. So
when we talked about 5-foot width sidewalks, you want to take us back to when we decided on that, the reasoning of the width, the 5-foot width of the sidewalks?
that was for ease of use for pedestrian traffic. You know, if the 5-foot width allows opportunity to pass each other with ease, and if you have strollers and those items, wagons, you know, kids types of appurtenances going down those sidewalks, ease of pedestrian traffic. And it is a new federal guideline. I don't know that they've adopted it yet, but you are seeing the federal guidelines shift to a 5-foot minimum for pedestrian walkways. It used to only be 4, yes.
I don't know if you've addressed this, but the tree in question, that is in the right-of-way, correct?
Yes, that tree is in the right of way.
It just seems to be a complicated issue. There's so many things playing into this, and these are old neighborhoods, old beloved neighborhoods. I wonder if we could, I don't know, I wonder if we could take some time to think about how we could, you know, save this tree.
You know, I think about a lot of that too, but, you know, the reason we have these ordinances in place is so that we don't have to make the decisions case by case. You know, I know we would love to, but if we start that, there's going to be someone 3 blocks away that doesn't want it, then you have to make another decision. Then you don't have a continuous sidewalk. The goal is to have where we can get around everywhere. But if we start making decisions and like this, I know we never like to say no, to take something away from someone's area there, but you have to be consistent. Otherwise, you're sending mixed signals to staff and makes projects a lot more difficult, and every commission can have a different view on it, so it will consistently change. So I think as long as our ordinance is fairly straightforward and it's been developed over the years, I'd like us to stick with it.
I was just wondering, when you said that you can't have a permanent structure in the right-of-way, what do we do in those types of scenarios when that does happen?
So if it's a structure that is in the right of way and has been there for 100 years, we don't actively pursue removal of those structures. However, if a project requires it, like if there was a street expansion project or something, we would. Every time a property like that transfers, we get calls from mortgage companies saying, hey, part of the structure is in your right of way, can you issue us a letter saying it's okay for it to be there? We tell them, no, we're not going to send a letter saying it's okay for any private structure to be in the right of way, but what we do is issue them a letter that says it can be there until such time that some action by the city commission requires it to be removed. In other words, there's a project that comes up. If it's been placed at some point in the last 20 or 30 years since we've been more active in our management of those sorts of things than they maybe were in the past. Some of them end up there and we don't see them, and unless somebody complains, we don't find out about them. Some of them we've issued compliance orders and there's been no compliance. So I guess we as staff then have to decide what's the next step. Do we continue on with a compliance order through legal means? You deal with things that are most pressing and pertinent at the time, and so, obviously, just as we do mowing and tree height issues and all that, you try and administer them as uniformly as possible, but there'll be instances where we deal with things case by case as they become an issue associated with some other project.
Are we speaking of a building currently that is going to have to be taken down because of the sidewalk project?
To my knowledge, this project isn't
not
requiring any building to be moved or removed, whether in the right of way or not.
Another item, we've also had conditional permits and things like that come forward where if there is a hardship shown, maybe there's some little leeway, but is there a hardship shown in this case?
So that language is typically associated with variances specific to land uses, not to construction projects. So yeah, the hardship approaching confiscation of the use of property would be a measure that we use for variances. Philosophically, you could think of it the same way as it confiscating the adjoining use of property as it exists right now. And I think as long as the project's in the right of way, it would be a pretty tough case to make that it would be a hardship based on that definition.
Are there examples of variances that we've granted on a construction project like this that you can remember?
I can't remember any variances. We've adjusted design in certain locations within the parameters of the requirements. On North Douglas, there were a few little unique locations where we had to work around. On West City Limits Road with the sidewalk. We had to work through some issues where we actually ended up getting easements from adjoining property owners. So we expanded beyond the right of way because of the grade issues associated with the project in those locations.
Explain, if we were not to either to table or delay this process, what kind of timeline delay would that put on the project and or other projects that may be involved because we had to delay this?
I think we'd probably visit at a staff level about that as to what to recommend to you. We need to award the bids within 30 days. They're good for 30 days. We did have only one bidder, I believe, on this project. Our contractors are busy, which is a great thing, but tough to find folks to do the work. I guess, like I said, we'd talk about that at a staff level, but probably at this point to rebid is going to be tough to find someone later on, especially if we're doing, additional design work or engineering. So probably put it back in the capital improvement cycle and talk about it at budget time. But then the issue remains too. So, that doesn't, maybe not a satisfying answer, but that's likely what would happen. Without discussing it with the, engineering staff, if you did give different direction, I would hate to say what for certain we would do.
I think we should just say too that Riverside Drive, that design does include sidewalk. The 12th Street project and Pine Street project budgeted for this year, those designs are including the sidewalk installation as well. We did it on A Street, we did it on 21st Street. We've been including them in the designs of our projects since the implementation of that plan.
I'll allow you a chance to speak again soon, Steve. I just wanted to add that I think all of us as commissioners understand the very personal nature of a project like this. That's why we are asking so many questions, and I think we're probably not, that's why we're kind of retreating from making a decision, because it's painful when you're making people unhappy and you know how much a tree or their property means to them. But I look back to why we adopted the active transportation program, and that's because many of us, myself especially, received a lot of questions and complaints about why we don't have complete streets, why we don't have sidewalks in various places in the community. And in a lot of cases, that was because of decisions previous commissions made where they didn't require a sidewalk for this reason or that, and other historical developments that have happened over the years. And I just think it's important for us to, like Dave said, stick to the vision that we have, because once we start making exceptions in a case like this, there are many other good reasons for exceptions too that will come from very personal places. And so if that's the route we're going to take, I think we need to go back to the active transportation plan and adjust that and say, we're going to make concessions for these reasons. But if we're not willing to do that, if we believe in what we approved several years ago, I think the answer is to move forward with this project. If we can accommodate the tree, I think what I'm hearing here is we'd love to do that. I just don't know if that's going to be possible from what engineering is telling us.
That's a good point, Nathan. That was going to be my question. I used to live on Lynn, so there's a lot of big, beautiful trees down there. And it's a nice shaded spot too. But that was going to be kind of my question, is twofold. One, what is the opportunity to try to save that tree? At what point do we say we can or can't? Is it when we go in and dig? Two, if we try to save that tree and 10 years from now, it doesn't work and a branch falls on a car or a person, is that our liability or the homeowner, or how does that work when it's in the right of way? So two-part question.
Well, I can address the liability side of it. We have an obligation to maintain trees, and we have an arborist, and we have staff in parks. That's their job. If we don't exercise proper ordinary care, the law of negligence would overlie this, and we could be liable, but I'm not particularly worried about it because we have staff that do that.
Yeah, anytime you work around any trees, it's difficult with if there's any shallow roots, which I'm assuming there is with this well as established a tree as it is. There's a lot of challenges.
So the challenge isn't just east-west, it's also the fact that we got to fix the north-south.
The north-south ramp is out of compliance. I would imagine we remove the existing sidewalk. Hopefully the roots are not directly under the existing sidewalk that is there. The way it sounds, that's probably not the case, because when they put that sidewalk in, they had to deal with roots as well. So.
Any more commission discussion?
I do want to just say, Mayor Johnson, that as someone who lives in an older part of town with historic homes, I empathize with the Winters and the others on Lynn Street and Fifth Street, because that side yard, the right of way, the tree, that all contributes to their what they call home, their sense of place. And it's more than just another sidewalk to them. To everyone else, it's just a sidewalk in a construction project. So I do empathize with them a lot, and this is very troublesome, this decision we have to make. So I just want to point that out to the commission that it, as you stated, I want to reiterate, it's not a black and white decision.
Steve, did you have more you wanted to add? If you could step to the podium, please.
Thank you, everyone, for your feedback, and I think I've processed some of that. My clients have concerns about why, first of all, there has to be 2 sidewalks versus 1, at least on east-west. I mean, I understand uniformity, but when we get to uniformity, and we talked about Riverside, you can walk that, and you're not going to have uniformity on Riverside. You're just not. I mean, it's not possible, and we all know that sitting here. So it seems to me the idea should be to try to work with people the best you can with the various issues that you have per block, per property owner. So, going back to this history about having an ordinance, and we're trying to follow the ordinance or now this action plan. Well, the answer was, at least back before we had this action plan, that the way people understood how their property was going to work coming in here like I did in the fall of '99, if you were a prior property owner, you didn't have to put in a new sidewalk unless you had new construction. Now it's, if there's a road that's going to need new construction, it just comes in for you. And I don't think there are a lot of property owners that understand that or anticipate that, and hence that's why we have the issue that we're dealing here with today. I would simply implore the commission to use its best judgment and make decisions that are best, in particular for property owners that will be majorly affected. And I would urge, if there's any doubt in your mind about what to do tonight, deferring is probably a better option than going forward. Those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to address the commission on this item? Absolutely, Terry.
This is very hard for us, and when we sit here and listen to the discussion, of course, it sounds like we're making a big fuss over a tree, and it's silly. It's what it seems to sound like. But when it's a property you have taken care of the way we have taken care of ours for 40 years, it becomes something quite a bit more. And suggesting that, oh, this is going to happen every place else, when it's clearly not, doesn't give us any comfort in these decisions. You ask about hardship. Well, where this sidewalk will run will bisect my driveway, the driveway that's in there for 100 years, and I won't be able to park a car there. I feel like I should be able to use my driveway. I can drive through it to get into my garage, but with this sidewalk coming in the middle and you can't park on a sidewalk, I will lose the one parking place I have on my property. That's a hardship. You're worried about old people and stuff. I'm an old people. And if I have to, shovel all that and lose my parking space on my driveway, I feel compromised. I'm not sure that this tree on the corner is the only one I'm going to lose, and it would have been so helpful. I have to say, I never knew about these plans or this particular decision that was made in 2016. It never crossed our radar, and I read the newspaper. It should be made before people do what we've done. I don't think you're done with my property. I think I'm afraid the city is going to take out not 1 but 3 trees, maybe at least, leaving me with a completely denuded west side to my house. I wouldn't have planted them. I wouldn't have worked to beautify my property if I knew it was going to be subject to something like this. I don't know, Cheryl. Well, yeah, and this is the other thing. Where you're going to put that sidewalk and you're only going to do it up 3 blocks, and then there's nothing planned for the rest of it. So it's a sidewalk. It will be a sidewalk to nowhere. And the other sidewalk, which already has a bed, I don't know, we act like it's such a big deal to walk across the street if you want to use a sidewalk. Really? I don't see that. And it's going to really compromise our home. And I regret that. And I hate coming here. But I think, well, we've been listened to, and I appreciate that. But I think we have a point, although I feel very helpless and hopeless. Thank you for your time.
Adam, did you want to address any of Terry's concerns?
Just, I know that he's visited with the engineering staff and they talked about, adjustments in the sidewalk alignment to avoid some of those other trees that Mr. Winter spoke of. But
Yeah, please step to the podium, Scott.
My name's Scott Lucan. I'm at 418, excuse me. We've all been discussing this for a while, and the thought of possibly putting, if we must put a sidewalk, to do it like what is on 4th Street on the north, where it is right parallel to the curb. And that would make the most sense if a sidewalk were to be done. So my thought is to examine that idea, because especially when you look at 5th Street and you go to the distance that is planned in this particular job, if you go further up the hill, you see that there's a huge embankments in the yard. So putting a sidewalk in 5 feet or whatever it was, that's impossible at that location. And the next block, you have this huge water main, whatever the hell it is. It could be gas. I don't know. That takes up a huge space, so I can't imagine that it's even going to go through at that point. But, along the curb makes most sense if that's even a possibility to entertain, if there must be one. In my personal and my wife's, I don't think it's even necessary to have a sidewalk, but that's just food for thought.
one thing with we refer to those as attached sidewalks. They're attached to the curb. The current ordinance states that attached sidewalks should be no less than 6 feet wide, so just throwing that out there. Also, just keep in mind that the attached sidewalks can be challenging in the wintertime for homeowners with snowplow, windrows on the sidewalk. And they do create their own challenges at driveways as well, because you'd have to jog. You have to disconnect from the curb to get through a driveway. There's great issues with approaches. Yeah, we try to avoid attached sidewalks if possible. But it is an option. There's safety issues associated with attached sidewalks as well. People park along there, you have car doors that open up, somebody's walking down the sidewalk, or that's why they're required to be 6 feet wide versus 5 feet wide. So.
Would anyone else from the audience? Yep. If you could step to the podium, just because it's aired live, and so we want it on the recording.
This discussion makes it sound like there are absolutely enormous numbers of people going up and down that street, and that's just not true. And I'm not just giving a self-service story from my perspective. They were talking about wheelchairs. In 40 years, I haven't seen a wheelchair on that sidewalk across the street. It just doesn't have that large of a traffic that we couldn't adjust and accommodate a little bit. I hate the idea of the sidewalk, but at least if it were attached, as you mentioned, at least I probably wouldn't have to give up all of my trees and stuff, and that would make this a lot easier to swallow. I'm assuming that anything we say, you're going to then be able to say, well, this could happen. We have some attendant dangers. But it seems like it should be what commonly happens. I'd like a little bit of consideration from that perspective.
Adam, if we were to look at something like that, is that something that we would have to take time to investigate to see if that's even possible in the area that they're referencing?
Yeah, it could change the scope of the project. There's grade issues associated with attaching it to the curb because you have to basically follow the street grade to a T to have that sidewalk perfectly adjacent to the curb. So you can come off at a 2% maximum, which isn't very much slope, so we have to basically come off, we'll just say flat, from the back of curb towards the right-of-way, outside of the right-of-way. Then we have to be able to match in existing grades that are there to that sidewalk.
When I hear you talk about adjacent sidewalks, the only thing I can think of is when you get done pushing snow out of your driveway and then the plow comes through and just fills it up. Now you got the whole length of the sidewalk with that. How much of a problem that would be to get off of there. I don't think adjacent sidewalk is the answer here.
The answer is no sidewalk.
I second that. It's unneeded. There's one on the other side of the street. I just don't get this.
Cheryl, if you want to address the commission, please step to the podium. Sorry.
I guess I just don't understand. I understand the handicapped accessibility, but why do we need a sidewalk on both sides of the street? It will not happen on Riverside. We walked it Saturday. It's going to go through somebody's living room. And if they're going to get some sort of an easement or adjustment, I don't know why on Fifth Street we have to have two sidewalks. It's not a hardship to cross the street. We've lived there 100 years. We've been good stewards in this community. This is the third time we've come to the commission with an issue about this property. And the other two times, you turned us down. And we really feel attacked. And we're going to lose a lot. And nobody seems to care. I mean, we're elderly too. And like Terry said, we still shovel. We have a small garage, we have a small driveway. It's all going to be compromised. And I appreciate you listening, but it is going to be a hardship for us if you do this.
Charles Tilkey, I live at 416 Locust. I'm right behind Terry Winter and Cheryl Winter. My question to the committee, I've lived there 60 years. I've lived next to them in my mom and dad's house to the south on Lynn Street, and I bought the house behind them when my dad had cancer. In my 60 years living on Lynn and Locust, I have not seen hardly anybody walk that one sidewalk that is present since the 60s and 70s. When Mount Marty had their kids, college kids walk up and down, there was traffic. We have traffic on Locust Street because of the Lincoln School. They run north and south. They have sidewalks on both sides. Green has sidewalks on both sides. I'm just wondering if you ever do a survey to see that nobody walks that sidewalk. You're spending money where it doesn't need to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the audience that would like to address the commission? Commissioners, any more discussion? We do have a motion and a second, correct?
For a point of clarification, if we were to want to table this, would that have to be a separate motion? How does that work?
We would vote this motion and then that would be a separate motion? That's what
So the motion on the table is to go forward or not with the current?
Or you can motion to amend the existing motion.
How, I guess I have a clarification question, which I didn't see in here. I see how Would we have another meeting before this bid expires?
So it was bid last Thursday. So we have 30 days to award the project. So yes, we would have, I believe we'd have another meeting, correct?
So the meeting on the 23rd would still cover the, I'm just saying, because we're asking to table it and maybe investigate some of the ideas that were brought up. If we would want to do that, this bid is still good at our next meeting, should we decide to move forward, correct?
I believe so, is that?
Yeah, Ross, my understanding is that they have 30 days, is that correct? From when it was
From when
opened.
the bids were open.
Correct.
Again, I just caution the commission, this would be an ordinance change in my mind, then if we're digging into items like this, per case-by-case basis, in order to make staff job a little clearer and all the neighbors and everyone else's neighborhoods, we should revisit the ordinance and change it then. That's where we're at. Otherwise, we need to pass this.
Or at least the active transportation plan.
Any more discussion? Roll call.
I would like to make a motion to amend, or to amend the previous motion to table this for further discussion.
Is there a second for that motion?
Second that.
So now we vote on the amendment? All right, so does everyone understand what the amendment is? Yes to table to our next meeting?
Yes. Are you going to have discussion there? Because I would have a question.
Is there any more discussion?
I don't know if this is Amy's question, but I guess my question is table it to what? Do we need further clarification on that? Table it indefinitely, table it to the next meeting, table it till what?
Okay, let me add, table it to our next city commission meeting.
And my question to the commission would be, what do you want staff to do with it when it's tabled? Like specifically, do we want to look into that sidewalk, attached sidewalk, is that what we call it? Attached sidewalk, or rerouting sidewalk, or no sidewalk, or?
So if we're gonna talk redesign, I don't know that we can meet that deadline.
Okay, yeah, so perhaps tabling it to the next commission meeting wouldn't work if you have specific direction for us.
And that would also change, like I said, the scope of the project, and maybe enough
Probably
to where we would
rebidding,
have to
yeah,
rebid the
right.
project.
So if you just want to table it, and, then we may not be able to do any work on it, or re-engineer or redesign something by the next meeting, and that's okay. That would be the same issue then you're dealing with next time, but we just want to do what you guys, are looking for.
So could I amend my amendment to the motion? To table this indefinitely for the staff to revisit alternatives as proposed tonight, to explore other options for the construction of a sidewalk.
I'll second that.
All right, so we have a motion and a second for the amendment. Is there any further discussion before we have a vote? I would echo Dave's thoughts in that, if on 8th Street, for example, there were property owners that were affected, that had to lose trees. It was a difficult process. Riverside Drive, we intend to put sidewalk on both sides there. That will be a difficult process. If we are making exceptions, there will be plenty of more exceptions in the future. So that's where my concern lies. For me, this is the bigger picture for what's good for the community, and I do believe that is having a transportation system that's accessible for all, that offers uniformity, and that people know when they go someplace in town, they have a sidewalk to walk on both sides. That's where my thoughts go, and even though I know this is very painful on a personal property owning level, I think the greater good for the community is our current active transportation plan. Yes, we are voting on the amendment to table this indefinitely while staff look at other options. So yes, if that's what you want to do. No, if you don't support tabling it. With that, Al, can we have roll call?
No.
No.
Verdict? No.
Moser?
No.
Schramm, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Mayor Johnson?
No. The motion fails, so we're back to the original motion to pass the project, the bid award as proposed. Is there any more discussion from the commission before we proceed?
My only concern is that, are we still going to end up making exceptions when we do the Riverside Drive one? Because of the way the structures are on the side of the road. And it's why I'm struggling so much with this, because I kind of wonder if we're already going to be in this boat. But I have a hard time tabling this indefinitely at the same time too. So that's...
Have the engineering work been done on Riverside Drive project? No, I mean, if that's going to, we're going to run into similar issues there.
So those letters are going out this week. That the engineering work is complete. Yes, it does have its own set of challenges, and there will be some ununiformity, if you'll call it that, to where there's different widths, there's connected sidewalk versus disconnected sidewalk, but that's the way we could make it work on that project. There is a location that gets very close to a structure. There is one small bit of sidewalk that it's about impossible to put it in. So that spot will not have sidewalk. It's about impossible without removing the structure. So
any more discussion? Roll call.
Sarda?
Aye.
Verdict?
Aye.
Moser?
Aye.
Schramm?
No.
Weber?
No.
Benson?
Aye.
Mayor Johnson?
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, everyone who attended tonight to share your concerns. We do appreciate it, and we very much appreciate the respectfulness of the conversation that occurred this evening. Number 8 under new business is consideration of memorandum 20-63 regarding resolution 20-20 for the 2020 bridge re-inspections. Banner Associates would do the work, and the city will be responsible for 20% of the cost. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on this item? Adam, do we have an idea of how much that will be from our budget at this point?
I glanced through the past years to decipher that in case that question came up, and it's ranged anywhere from about $900 to about $4,000, because it really depends on how much the engineers put into each of the projects. So again, I'm assuming that it would be in that range, but that's what it's been in the past. And we do have a bridge and street fund that would currently fund it. I mean, we have an annual allotment of about $21,396 that comes in that is saved for different projects and can be used only for bridge spending. So again, we would have the funding as long as it stayed in that neighborhood.
Is there any further commission discussion? Would anyone in the audience like to address the commission on this item? Roll call.
Sarda.
Aye.
Burdick.
Aye.
Mosier.
Aye.
Aye.
Becker.
Aye.
Jensen.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. There being no other business on tonight's agenda, I would ask for a motion to adjourn into executive session to discuss contractual litigation and personnel matters under South Dakota Codified Law 1-25-2.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye. Is anyone opposed? Thank you very much, everyone, for attending tonight.